What you see here is our innovation hub at Research Park at Texas Tech University. And this is my second home in my university. I normally teach in the Health Science Center. I work in the Health Science Center, but I spent some time here next door, just down the road from our main campus at this innovation hub. And in fact, this window here is our office. That's where we office when we go over there. I like this picture as well because it shows our great sunsets in Lubbock, Texas. We have big skies and just enough dust in the air that it causes intense colors. So this is a typical night or evening in our town. Well, you know, I've been working at Texas Tech, finishing my 30th year at the university. And about 6 years ago, I grew with a team of people where we gathered together and began to translate one of our discoveries towards impact. We were beginning to learn about innovation. And my first exposure to innovation was actually about 8 years ago at Universidad del Desarrollo. I was there. We didn't have our innovation hub at that time. And I was walking to the classrooms for physical therapy, and I was with Vicente Mauri, and there was a new building there, and I don't remember exactly what year it was, but there was a new building. And I asked him what that building was, and he said it was the new innovation building for the university. So that's where I first began to learn about university innovation, was at your university. And then within just a short amount of time, our university built a facility, and I wasn't sure what it was about, but I began to learn about it as I drove by it every day from my home. And before you know it, I was getting together with these fine people to develop an innovation. Well, that all started the year before when I met this guy, Weston Waldo, in a talk he gave over at the main Texas Tech campus on his innovation. And I was hearing this experience, this discussion, and I thought, wow, maybe we can do that. So I went back to my colleague, Suhas Pol, this guy right here, who's an engineer, and I started talking to him when we used to meet at the grocery store here at Market Street. Every Saturday morning, we'd meet and talk about our research. And I said, hey, do you think we should do a customer discovery like Weston Waldo did? And he said, yes, that maybe is a great idea. So that started it. And literally 6 or 8 months later, we had enough information and ideas that we went back to Weston. He at that time was beginning to work over at the Innovation Hub. We went back to him and pitched our idea to him. He said, yes, you should sign up for I-Corps, the National Science Foundation's Innovation Corps. He encouraged us to do this, so we signed up for the regional I-Corps cohort, and we were accepted, and our idea originally centered around helping women who had a previous cesarean section protect their uterine tissue when trying to make the decision to do a normal delivery. A lot of women who choose to do a normal delivery after C-section are at high risk for a traumatic tear of the neck of their uterus. And we had a way to help them make that decision by evaluating the status of their uterine tissue. And so we started there with our idea. And we brought that idea, my colleagues and I, Suhas Pol, as I spoke before, engineer, Kerry Gilbert, he's an anatomist and physiotherapist. Oops, sorry, I'm learning my new mouse. And this is Richard Ellis. He lives in New Zealand and is a physio with some specialty in the areas of technology. He has some ideas there. We built this team And we built this image-based technique that quantifies tissue characteristics. And that started in our meetings in Market Street, the local grocery store in their cafe. And after meeting Weston, we joined that Southwest I-Core node and brought the idea of evaluating uterine tissue. And we went out through that I-Core process. We went out, the I-Core gave us a little bit of money to go out and interview potential customers, not about our innovation, but rather about our understanding of their problems. We wanted to learn about the potential customers' problems. And by understanding what the NSF calls their pain, what their issue is, we can look to see if there's a fit between our idea before we develop it and their problem. We never once talk about our innovation to them, but rather learn about their challenges and see if our idea will address their challenges. If it does, that furthers our interest in pursuing that innovation, developing that innovation. If it does not, same as they would say in Silicon Valley, we pivot. We change our idea based on the information we gather from those potential customers. So it's a ready, fire, aim model, which means you go out and learn, you go out and do, you go out and discover, you get out of the lab and you don't stay in the lab and aim and aim and aim. You go out and simply discover what people are troubled with. And after that time, we would say in the United States, we were a deer in the headlights because we really didn't fully understand all of the nuances of the innovation space. We were all of us experienced faculty and clinician scientists, and Suhas he's a rocket scientist. This guy works in the area of wind technology and dynamics, and yet we were still learning about the innovation space. So what we did about it was we applied to, we did very well in our regional I-Core, and so we applied to the national program. That we were one of 240 teams that were accepted that year in the United States to do the National Innovation Core program. They gave us $50,000 to go out and travel across the country in a 7-week period, interviewing as many potential customers as possible to further our customer validation. Silicon Valley and the National Science Foundation will tell you that before you spend time and money developing an innovation, you should go out and do customer discovery. Because if you don't do that and you build something, you may be building something that nobody wants. And so you don't want to spend the time and resources on that because it could be a waste of time and your innovation may fail. And so you first go out and learn about the customer, and in learning about the customer, you look for that product market fit. And once you validate that, then you have a higher chance of success when you go to develop that innovation. You spend your money better, you invest people's time better, you're able to learn quicker about how to get to the solution by first going out and asking the customers. So we went to Houston, Texas. We're here in Lubbock up here. We went to Houston, Texas, and there we joined 22 other teams of 4 or 5 people to present our idea and then go out across the United States and learn. And that's what we did. In Houston, we went to the National I-Core. We arrived there thinking we were the team, and then we met the director there, who was really tough, and by the end we were crushed because that guy completely disassembled everything we thought we should do, and we had to reconstruct our ideas based on their input. And so from there we didn't feel lost, but we were certainly challenged by that experience, and we had to get out of the building. And we went from having 14 interviews that first week in Houston. We were the lowest scoring team out of the 21 teams in Houston that week, but we went out for the rest of the time and came back with 155 interviews, and we were the top team when we were finished after 7 weeks. And in fact, it ain't brag, as we would say in Texas, it ain't bragging if you did it. We were the top team in the United States that year with 155 interviews in 7 weeks. We crushed it, but it required that we first went through an extremely difficult time in the beginning to help us disconnect from what we thought and reestablish what our ideas were and go out and truly discover. And during that process of 155 interviews, we pivoted our idea from working with people in the what's called the VPAC VBAC, vaginal birth after C-section, from the VBAC customer segment to the sports medicine segment. We brought our innovation to learn more about early detection of injury. Well, to do that, we went a lot of different places. We went from Houston up to Portland and Eugene, Oregon. We went to Los Angeles, LA County area. We had to go to Hawaii. I'm sorry, the job had to take us to Hawaii. It was tough. I tell you, we had to go suffer long hours learning at a convention in Hawaii. From there, we went to Tulsa, Oklahoma. We went to several towns in Arkansas, Denver, Boulder, Vail, Colorado. We got to go spend time at the Steadman Philippon Institute and learned from top researchers there more about the challenges that they face with early detection of injury. And then we came back and did more interviews in Lubbock, and then we finished up back in Houston. This was a 7-week tour across the western half of the United States. And when we went to Portland, we went to a national obstetric and gynecology conference there. And we also made it over to University of Oregon and spent time with some of the sports medicine professionals there at University of Oregon. This is a home of some really great champions in several different sports. And then we spent time not only in Tulsa, but went over to the obstetrics conference in Hawaii, as we suggested before. And then we spent time at University of Colorado Sports Medicine. We met this guy, a physician there, who was not only an innovator himself, having 5 different innovations go to market, but also was a leader in the area of hip surgery. And for spare time, we learned that he liked to base jump and kite suit fly, which is the extreme of adventure and risk. And so he was quite an intense individual, and learned a lot from him about developing an innovation. And then we met also individuals who have learned how to use technology to understand muscle glycogen levels. And that was also a very interesting discovery. Here we are in Vail, Colorado with the Steadman Philippon Research Institute. And that was where we met some of the greats who have done research with top athletes in the world, for that matter. They've had athletes from all over the world come visit them. And we learned a lot about their take on sports injury. And along the way, it was very important, as my colleagues at UDE, they know about me, it was very important that we enjoy good meals while we were out on the road discovering. We had to recharge our batteries and fill our gas tank. And so we found some really great places to eat. We were working about 12 to 14 hours a day with our discovery process for 7 weeks while out on the road. And then once we finished the day, after a nice dinner, we'd have to go home and work online, entering our interview information into a database, a centralized database, till 1 in the morning. And then we'd wake up at 6 in the morning and start all over. So we had to treat ourselves once a day to some really great meals along the way. Well, that experience being around those 21 teams from around the United States, they had 6 national faculty there, some very esteemed people still to this date. We still interact with Max Green, and he's one of the top guys in the United States. We got talked by him. We got talked by Blake Petty from Texas A&M. He's one of the top innovative leaders in the United States. It had a boot camp mentality. They really worked us over hard, but in the end, we were able to evolve and rise up and grow and learn a lot. It's a lean launch methodology, which means they want you to accomplish a lot and not waste a lot of time or resources mining or learning about those data that you need to gather from the customers. The mantra of the group is to get out of the building. Now, that's no problem for me. I'm a clinical provider. I'm a physical therapist by trade, and I've seen patients even every year up through this year since I started as an academic. However, a lot of the colleagues I work with are scientists, they're STEM professionals, science, technology, engineering, math, and they love to sit in their lab behind their computer. And so this process teaches them how to step away from that and go make contact with the people and learn from them about their experience. And they used to say, they're calling our baby ugly, which means they're going to tell us the truth, not necessarily what we want to hear, but what we need to hear. And so they spent time giving us the raw truth. And they shared with us that a business model, which is something we built our foundation on, the business model canvas, does not equal a business plan. A business plan is what runs an existing business. But when you're building a startup, you have to use the business model canvas that defines all the angles, corners, and foundations of your innovation's ecosystem. You have to learn about those things in order to have a full understanding of how to make it work. And they shared with us, we have to, it's very scientific. You have to establish your customer hypotheses, what you think they're going to need, and then you go out and learn about them and see if you're able to validate that hypothesis or not. So it is hypothesis testing, just like all the areas of science, but it's more qualitative. It's using interviews to validate what you think you know. And they say a hypothesis does not have to be right, it's just a guess. So what you're going to go out and do is try and learn about that hypothesis by conducting these customer interviews. And so we did our over 150, and most of them were in person. This was really important. They don't like to have a lot of video chats or phone calls. They don't like us to do that. They want you face-to-face with the individual. Now that's all changed now with COVID. We're running, I'm now a mentor in the innovation space. I'm now one of the National Science Foundation mentors, and I help young teams move forward. And they're doing all of their interviews virtual right now with COVID out in the space. But normally we encourage people to go out and do face-to-face interviews. And then after the cohort, after we finished, this was an older slide. We're now at about 240 interviews. We wanted to increase our interviews to understand the space even more. And we've once again pivoted and are starting to take care of wounds and burns. So that was based on our further discovery. Now, here's the thing about our pivot. We started out in obstetrics, we moved to sports medicine, and now we're in more of an acute care situation. But that's not to say we can't do these later. What they teach you in I-Corps is that you should try and go for the lowest hanging fruit. In other words, those customer segments that will most easily translate, that will most easily evolve and be most easily marketed with your innovation. And so these other ones over here are great. The obstetrics could happen, but it takes 4 to 5 years to even begin to get them to open up to a new technology. They're very slow to change. And so we've made the decision to move over to a new segment because of their the desperation of their problem. This is Stephen Konzik. what he shared with us at the innovation at the I-Corps was the idea of the balance between deep science and the ease of use, or the marketability. This is science, this is business. And this is not a new story. This started back here with Niels Bohr, who was a famous scientist. He had all the right ideas, but he didn't translate it to the public. And at the same time, Thomas Edison had a brilliant product that reached out to the entire world, but it was low science. There was no risk with it. And so what the NSF, National Science Foundation, encourages is to be like Pasteur: high science, high risk, high translation. And we carry that idea even today, looking to find ways to translate the high science to the public. You don't want to build something that nobody cares about. So that's why you got to go out and learn from the customer to see if you have that fit that we talked about before. And so what this does is it illustrates the need for discovery. It illustrates the need for translation. It illustrates the need to transition your idea to impact, where it influences others. And physical therapists are great at that skill. We're great at that skill. If you think about it, we do it every day. We learn really great, tough, high science, and every day we translate it to the patient. And now you're in the Maki program. And the Maki program is a program that is designed to stretch you, to change you, to transform you. And that program is a process. You come in as a first year, you're a deer in the headlights, just like I showed you before, with all the things that you have to learn and do and consider and engage in. And that's probably a very different experience than you've ever had. Think about it. In my 50s, I had done things the same way, or not the same way, but in the same area for 25 years, 24 years. And I went to the I-Corps where I was blown away. I was completely transformed in the way I was thinking. I had that same experience that you're having right now. I was exposed to something I hadn't done before. And I was asked to go out and change the way I think. It transformed my worldview. And I did that in my 50s. If I can do that in my 50s, you can do it now. You can do it in the Maki. You're encountering, the first years, you're encountering something that may be taking your breath away. It's very big, it's very different. But I want to say to you that when you're in that place where you're being challenged, where you're being stretched, where you feel like you're being kicked around, you feel like you can't keep going, you feel like it's too much for you, that's when you're really being stretched. That's when you're really growing. So I want to encourage you to keep an open mind, to keep your eyes up. Don't look down with frustration. Keep your eyes up, look around, and observe and learn. Now you're really learning. And you're going to build this armament, this repertoire of science and clinical skill that helps you to move forward as a leader in your industry in Chile. So this is your opportunity. Don't miss a moment of it. You know, Felicity Jones in the movie The Aeronauts, she was in a balloon in the 1800s, in a balloon, well, not the actress, but the character was in a balloon in the 1800s at 30,000 or 10,000 meters off the ground. She was going for the world record of altitude. And she turned to her scientist partner. She was an innovator. She turned to her scientist partner and said, look up, the sky is wide open. The sky is wide open. So keep your eyes up and keep your eyes on the discovery. That's the position you're in. Now, if you're the second year, your eyes are probably drooping. You're feeling the impact of hard work over and over and over again. Well, this is the time where your metal, your steel is being tested, where you've got to keep going. It's not the strongest that survives, it's the enduring that survives. This is when your learning is really starting. When you're tired and you have to keep learning, this is the time to keep moving. You know, there's moments where you feel like you're just going to fall, that you're going to give out. However, something at the I-Core, the National Science Foundation I-Core, we learned, if you're going to fall forward. Because if you fall forward, you're still moving forward. So when you're off balance, when you don't feel like your feet are under you, you feel like you can't keep going, just lean forward and fall, get up and do it again, lean forward and fall, and you keep moving. This is really important right now, because this is where your transformation really begins to occur. You transform when you're maximally challenged. So allow that process to occur. Don't fight it. Allow it to occur. Keep going. You're going to gain from it. And encourage each other. Support each other. It takes a village to finish your graduate work. So you need to keep moving at this time so that you can discover how to translate your ideas to impact the people around you. You can use innovation thinking at each step of the way. And I know that you're learning innovation. It's a part of your program to engage in innovation in the Maki. And so now it's time to put that to work and translate what you're learning to impact. That's what a discovery I had in my experience with the I-Core. And now as a mentor and as an educator and as an innovator, I'm helping other people in your shoes make that same transition here at the Innovation Hub. I want to encourage you to keep going. So I look forward to seeing you. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you today in this lecture online with the Maki. At this time, when you're listening to this, I am a mentor in an I-Core, regional I-Core program, not with 10, not with 15 teams. This year, the largest number we've ever had, with 30 teams in the Lubbock facility at the hub. We're right now having our mentoring time, our inaugural, our startup time for this new cohort of 3 weeks of discovery with regional I-Core teams, 31 teams for I-Core. So I had to be there for that because I'm one of the mentors. I'll see you later on. I believe I'll see you tomorrow morning in our class together again. But at this moment, I want you to spend time with each other talking about ways to innovate. I want you tonight to think of one way that you can begin to think about translating an idea you have to impacting others around you. So that's something you need to do tonight. Think of one way, and tomorrow morning, I'm going to ask you about that. What is the one way that you think now that you can translate what an idea or a discovery that you're making to impact others around you? Great. It's a pleasure. I hope this gave you something to think about, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning.